Good morning. When was the last time you had to make a life-defining choice? There are times in life when we face crossroads in our lives. Certain issues come up and we find ourselves having to make significant choices. We have to choose which way we are going to go. Perhaps it's a career or job you want to do, the person you want to marry, or where you're going to live. These are quite personal choices, but they can have a much wider ripple effect. We often talk about guidance when we face these situations, but it's been my experience that often it's not clarity that is needed, but obedience. Doing the right thing can often be the tougher choice. But as we see through the life of Moses and Jesus, doing the right thing and sometimes having to choose another way is the way to life. Welcome to Hope Church Aldershot and this week's Sunday talk on Moses, the latter years, part of our ongoing Bible Heroes series. Hi, my name is Steve and I'm the pastor of Hope Church here in Aldershot. It's been an unusual week for me as most of my family have gone down with the COVID virus. Doing the right thing, I have discovered, has some very positive outcomes. I've been double jabbed and that has helped. The infected part of my family has stayed isolated and this has helped. We've washed hands, kept apart, and chosen to put in place ways of doing things that have been inconvenient, but it has meant we have got through a very difficult week. This week, I've been pondering about key decisions and realizing that for many of them, the choice is not the problem. The problem is finding the determination to do the right thing, even if it is inconvenient, frightening, or just difficult. In our reading this morning, Moses is calling a whole nation to make a choice. Which way are they going to go? They're on the plains of Moab, having spent the last 40 years in the wilderness, being forged into the people of God. They have spent 4 decades with God in their midst as a pillar of cloud and of fire. Every day, God provided them with food to eat and water to drink. Moses, after all the years of leading these people, took the wisdom of all that he had learned. That knowledge had taught him how to do life with skill, and distilling all that wisdom, he laid a very real choice out before the people. Choose to follow God and live. Choose not to follow God and face the consequences. It's a real choice. It's a faith choice, and it's an enduring choice that ripples through history to us today. In this second talk on Moses in our ongoing series of Bible heroes, we discover that Moses has learned that doing the right thing, even if it means going another way to others, is life-bringing. Our reading this week is from Deuteronomy 30, verse 11 to 20. This command I'm giving you today is not too difficult for you, and it is not beyond your reach. It is not kept in heaven, so distant that you must ask, who will go up to heaven and bring it down so we can hear it and obey? It is not kept beyond the sea, so far away that you must ask, who will cross the sea to bring it to us so we can hear it and obey? No, the message is very close at hand. It's on your lips and in the hearts so that you can obey it. Now listen. Today, I am giving you a choice between life and death, between prosperity and disaster. For I command you this day to love the Lord your God and to keep his commands, decrees and regulations by walking in his ways. If you do this, you will live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you and the land you are about to enter and occupy. But if your hearts turn away and you refuse to listen, and if you are drawn away to serve and worship other gods, then I warn you now that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live a long, good life in the land you are crossing the Jordan to occupy. Today, I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessing and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life, so that you and your descendants might live. You can make this choice by loving the Lord your God, obeying him and committing yourself firmly to him. This is the key to your life. And if you love and obey the Lord, you will live long in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the language style of ancient civilizations, the wisdom of the gods was usually attained by great tasks of going up to heaven or undergoing great quests across the seas. But this is not for the people of God. The word, the wisdom they sought was not far away. It was quite literally tabernacled, tented amongst them. John echoes this moment in his opening poem about Jesus as the word in his gospel. Verse 14 of chapter 1. So the word became flesh and dwelt, or tabernacled, among us. For those more scholarly types, you will know that before Christianity was called Christianity, it was publicly referred to as the way. In Acts chapter 9, verse 2, we read about the apostle Paul, before he started to follow Jesus, would seek letters from the Jewish council to arrest those who followed the way. Jesus, in his Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 7 verse 13, said this: enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Here Jesus echoes the final words of Moses, who at the end of a life of leading the people of God for 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, finally brings them to the gates of the promised land and exhorts them. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life that you and your offspring may live. When we find Jesus prodding and provoking us to consider another way, there is a very real sense that the choices we make have weight and consequence. What is really important for us as a church is to understand that when people choose another way and follow Jesus, they are choosing life, not lifestyle. The life in question is not just what is lived in the here and now, but it is a long-term thing. It's even eternal. And let's not kid ourselves that these choices are easy. The gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life. You need to walk the way and enter through the gate. Jesus prodded and provoked those around him to consider another way of living within God's kingdom. To be honest, none of us really like to be prodded or provoked by other people, even if it's for the very best of reasons. When we are prodded and provoked, it is to deliberately call out a reaction within us. The reaction is often uncomfortable, resting somewhere between hesitancy and outright opposition, and it reveals all sorts of shortcomings in our characters. If you ever want to highlight what it feels like to be provoked by someone to think about another way of doing things, can I draw you to the experience of your first Christmas as a married couple? Now, I appreciate those watching this are from a whole range of people in different types of relationships, and I'm not sure that this is a particular potential disaster for just married people. It would seem to me that Christmas is so wrapped up in traditions peculiar to culture, nationality, history, nostalgia, and dare I say it, disappointment, that when any parties meet to share Christmas, the negotiation skills of a UN diplomat are probably needed. Certainly this was the case for Amber and I. In fact, we were spared our very first Christmas, another way issue, as a married couple because we got married on December the 23rd and arrived on honeymoon on Christmas Eve in a beautiful cottage in Cornwall. And to be honest, Christmas was relegated to second place, at least in my mind. However, our second Christmas revealed the problems of another way of doing Christmas. The year before, our best man and his wife had shoved a Christmas tree and a full Christmas dinner in our car as we drove off, along with some Christmas presents. Year two revealed perhaps the darker side of my character. I am allergic to pine trees, and as romantic as a real tree is, I'm more of an artificial tree man. I mean, that's what my parents had. However, my more romantic bride was used to a real tree, and there was an expectation that the man of the house would wrestle the tree from shop to car, car to house, and then house to lounge. Needless to say, I felt provoked to please Amber, but must confess that when my skin started to itch and scratch, there was a little grumbling. Then there are the presents. My family are not really celebrators. We would buy each other a present, and then as kids, one of us would be the present elf and would be responsible for choosing the present that would be opened next. Presents were opened one at a time, enjoyed by all to see. Amber's parents, however, are celebrators. Presents would arrive in bin bag loads, and there would be what can only be described as a whirlwind of wrapping paper flying to all corners of the room as vigorous, unstructured unwrapping descended into chaos. Needless to say, another way occurred, and my nice, ordered, structured Christmas morning had changed forever. Then there is the visiting of the family, the meat choice for the dinner, the movie choice, the decorations on the tree choices, the color choices of decorations in the house, the arrival of children and their handmade decorations, and 100 other ways that painfully reveal huffing, sulking, prideful Steve in all his glory. The reality is we are all a bit oppositional when we are provoked to consider another way, even if it's for our own good. I think that's why the disciples found all their categories of life turned upside down by Jesus. He would defy social convention and say that there is another way, encouraging them to go to parties hosted by tax collectors and sinners. He would defy the very weather and say there is another way, or another one who is above nature itself. He would tell the rich man there is another way to follow God than simply keeping God's law, and showed how difficult that way was when he told the ruler to give up all his money. Each other way provoked those caught up in the story. Pharisees refused to engage with sinners. Disciples found themselves fearful of the one who commanded the very weather, and the rich young ruler went away sad, for he had many possessions. Refusal, fear, and sadness, all common reactions to provocation to another way, because the other way is often the harder way. If we are really honest with ourselves, are we any different? When we find ourselves provoked to choose the right way, do we react any differently? I know I don't. These stories are here because they speak into very real situations in our lives. When Moses is at the gate of the promised land and he remembers the 40 years of being forged into the people of God, he can recall the times when the people called out to God in an obedience crossed the miraculously parted seas. He remembers daily provisions of manna from heaven, water springing from rock, clothes and shoes never wearing out. But he also remembers golden calves and his own acts of disobedience that meant he would never enter the promised land. His own life was a living example of the choice the people faced, and his plea was for them to choose life. This morning, you may face many choices to do the right thing. The wisdom of Moses, the ability he developed to live life with skill, was to be obedient to God, even if the right choice was the hard choice. As you face those choices, will you remember the wisdom of Moses? Moses led the people of God out of Egypt, through the parted Red Seas, around the wilderness, and to the very gates of the promised land. As he completed his task, he exhorted the people to choose the way of God, and in doing so, choose life. This became the central story, told from generation to generation and celebrated as the Passover. Even here, Jesus would redefine this central story of the Jewish nation and prod and provoke his disciples to see it in another way. Moses had called the people to choose life once before. As the plagues devastated Pharaoh's Egypt, Moses called each household to kill a lamb and have its blood painted over each wooden doorway. It must have seemed like a strange choice to make, but it would mark where death would pass over so life could continue. The world went dark. Pharaoh lost his firstborn son, and the people of God were free. Jesus called the people to choose life. As sin devastated all people, Jesus willingly became the sacrificial lamb, and his blood was spilt on the wooden cross. It seemed a strange choice to make, but Jesus did not refuse, nor was he fearful or sad. In fact, for the joy set before him, he made such a choice. On the cross, death passed on to Jesus so that life could continue. The world went dark. God lost his firstborn son, and the people of God were free. The first is but a shadow of the second. The cross echoes in eternity. And so we finish at the point of greatest provocation. We are reminded to share the communion meal together as followers of Jesus. We choose to walk the narrower and harder way and choose life because Jesus chose another way, his life for all life. Later on this morning, we are breaking bread together as a church. As you come to share in this meal, come and choose life again. Life in all its fullness, bursting with possibility, hope, and opportunity. Choose a life that echoes in eternity.